This is lesson 53, part 1, decimal chart for course 1. So this is part 1 of this lesson, so please come back and watch part 2 after completing the questions that go with this part. So what we're looking at is we're looking at a decimal chart, and actually if you look into your textbook on page 277, they have this decimal chart. So I'm just going to be talking about what the decimal chart says. So the only piece I haven't put in my decimal chart is the operation in memory. That just tells you that these are the operations you'll be using. These are the memory clues that we're going to talk about. So this is just a chart to tell you and remind you about what you need to do with decimals for each of these things. So if you forget in a future lesson, you can always come back to this lesson, lesson 53, and it'll give you a little quick reminder. For addition and subtraction, if you are adding and subtracting with decimals, you need to line them up. Okay, so you line up the decimals, add or subtract them together, and you equal them. Okay, really straightforward, and you make sure you bring that decimal straight down because again, you are lining them up. Okay, same thing with subtraction. Line up the decimals, subtract, make sure you bring your decimal straight down. Okay, addition and subtraction are the same, nice and simple that way. You line them up and then do your addition or subtraction. For multiplication, it's a little bit different. Multiplication, you do not need to line up your decimals. Multiplication, you just do your multiplication. Okay, so you might have a decimal number with ones on each side, and let's say a decimal number with 2. Let's say you're doing 2 by 2 multiplication. You do your multiplication. You do your multiplication as normal, all right? You get this, get your answers. So you do, let's say that was a 3-digit. You carry your 0 down. You continue. Okay, you add them all together. You come down here. In your answer, you must count how many spaces up top you had decimal places. So you count how many decimal places. So this would be 1, 2, 3 decimal places, which means in your answer, you would have 1, 2, 3 decimal places behind your decimal. Okay, that's how you do multiplication, is you do your multiplication as normal, however that may be, and then you count your decimal places out. Whatever you counted up here, that's how many places you have behind your decimal down here. That's multiplication. Division. So when you're dividing by a whole number, so the whole number in this case is going to be represented by W. So you would be dividing by a whole number, and you are going to move the decimal up. Okay. So what that means is that this means you will have a decimal inside the dividend. Okay, your whole number is your divisor. Your dividend has a decimal. You just move that decimal straight up into your answer and do your division around it. Okay, so you would go and do your division as normal and then move the decimal straight up. Nice and simple for division by a whole number. Okay, very specifically by a whole number. Now, dividing by a decimal starts to get a little more complicated. This one is referred to as over, up. Okay, over, up means that if you have a decimal number, okay, as your divisor, you need to move that decimal so that you have a whole number here. So let's say your decimal started here, you are moving it to here to make that a whole number. And if I did that there, I have to do it here, same thing. Okay, my decimal is now there, and then I would move it up. So this is over, up. So however many times you need to move your decimal here to make this a whole number, you have to do the same thing to this side, and then you move it straight up, just like you did over here. Because then you've now changed this into being this. So once you do the over, and this is a whole number, and then you bring your decimal over for this one as well, you are now doing this division. It goes up, and you do your division as normal. Again, this is on page 277. I highly recommend you guys maybe writing it down somewhere that you can remember where to look. It's a really good thing to help you remember because some of these do get quite complicated if you're not used to doing them all the time. But this is lesson 53 for course 1, part 1, decimal chart. Please do these questions in lesson practice and then come back and watch part 2.